It's a rainy night, and Amelia is all dressed up in a pretty dress and high heels. She calls out to Hadius, hoping they'll find shelter in a nearby building. As she runs to escape the rain, he shouts her name from behind, and suddenly she trips. Just before she hits the ground, he catches her, asking if she's okay. She looks up at him, and her heart starts racing. She thinks that he's too close for comfort and reminds herself that she shouldn't get any closer to him. Yet, she can't help but wonder why her heart is pounding so much. After all, Hadius Meyer is her fiancé. He calls her name again, this time softly as he gently runs his fingers along her lips and leans in to kiss her. But Amelia pulls away, reminding herself that he's just her fiancé on paper and that their engagement is about to end. She tells him they need to hurry, but in her mind, she wonders if their story could have been different if they had met under better circumstances. As they keep running toward the building in front of them, escaping the rain, he holds up his coat, trying to shield her from getting soaked. It all started with a single letter. One of the Byrne family members is to marry the oldest son or daughter from House Meyer. No one really knows how Byrne, who's just a struggling tenant farmer, managed to receive a promise of marriage to someone from such a fancy noble family. Maybe Byrne saved a noble's life, won some kind of bet, or perhaps it was all just a misunderstanding or a joke. Whatever the situation was, that promise of marriage never gets fulfilled. And just like that, over 100 years go by. In the next scene, we see the king sitting in his throne room talking to an advisor who just brought him a message from the lady of House Meyer. The message makes the king furious, and he thinks it's a good chance to set things straight. His advisor pulls out an old letter that a commoner delivered some time ago and suggests that he use it. The king grabs the letter and starts reading it. The advisor explains that the letter is a promise, a written oath, saying that the descendants of a commoner family called the Byrnes are supposed to be engaged to members of House Meyer. The king says it's a ridiculous letter, but he decides that he could use the letter to suppress House Meyer. He grins in victory, and that is how Amelia became engaged at the age of 14. A poor commoner girl becomes the fiancée of a wealthy noble heir overnight. Even though it was a royal order, people criticized her and her family. She never wanted any of it, but people still pointed hands at her. They criticized her for being a greedy girl who coveted the title of duchess. They called her a vulgar, materialistic girl consumed with climbing the social ladder. But over time, people seemed to forget about her slowly. 4 years later, at Baron Vernon Manor, Amelia is now an 18-year-old woman. As she strolls through the halls, she can hear people whispering and chatting about her on both sides. She runs into the butler, Haspel, who calls out her name. He pauses for a moment, looking a bit unsure, and then he finally admits that he needs her help with something. He mentions a rare kind of tea from a place called Ludwig that's really tricky to brew. Likewise, he explains that they have a very important guest arriving from Nowak, and since Amelia is skilled at making tea, he asks if she could lend him a hand just this once. She thinks about how Haspel is at least one person who actually wants to talk to her. She makes up her mind, agreeing to help him, and his eyes sparkles with excitement and gratitude. He's the only person in this big, fancy manor who doesn't look at her with judgment or disdain. As she follows him away, the whispers from the people around them in the hall start to get louder, filling the air with gossip. In a room, Amelia is brewing tea while two women sit at a table, having a conversation. One of the women expresses how she is realizing the significance of sunlight in her life. She mentions that her neuralgia, a type of nerve pain, has been cured during her time here. This statement makes the other woman laugh gently, while our female lead continues making tea, listening to their chat. Suddenly, one of the women looks up and quietly tells the other that she hears Amelia is the child who comes to the manor for her bridal lessons. Her companion asks for clarification, wanting to know who Amelia is, and the first woman replies that she is the fiancée of Hadius Meyer. At that moment, our female lead flinches slightly at the mention of Hadius's name. The woman continues speaking, saying it's pretty silly to address her as the fiancé when her engagement is basically just for show. Furthermore, she mentions that she's heard Amelia only meets her so-called fiancé once a year, and only because the king says they have to. Her companion then asks if the girl visits this place often, adding that she must be really desperate to become a noble. Inside her head, our female lead screams that she is not desperate. However, the women continue their conversation, completely unaware of her inner turmoil. One of them claims that these days anyone can become a noble if they have enough money. But she points out that Amelia desires to earn the title of Duchess without putting in any real effort. As she listens to them speaking, her anger begins to build up, and she shakes in rage, but she doesn't interrupt the conversation. She never asked for any of this to happen. In a condescending manner, one woman remarks that there is nothing interesting about our female lead, calling her just an ordinary girl who is both miserable and greedy. In that same ridiculous tone, she adds that our girl appears quite gloomy, which is what one would expect from a poor commoner. Her companion responds by saying that our female lead has shameful parents. Though her father didn't have a choice in this situation because he passed away a long time ago, the woman insists that Amelia's mother should have at least stopped her. As a side note, she casually mentions that she has heard our girl's guardian is actually her stepmother. In response, her gossip mate pretends to show sympathy. The eyes of our female lead widen in surprise at this revelation. The other woman pretends to muse aloud, trying to recall a name. Mockingly, she asks if Amelia's surname is something like Beaver or Beggar. Having had enough, the female lead turns around to face them. One of the gossips pretends to notice her for the first time and calls out casually, requesting that she fetches a hat for her. She replies that she will call a maid to assist, and the woman reacts with disbelief, saying that our girl speaks as if she is not a maid. She asks how she became so arrogant, frowning. With confidence, Amelia replies that she is not a maid, and therefore not required to run personal errands for the unpleasant woman. The woman rises, visibly upset, and asks why she is in the room if she is not a maid. In reply, our girl explains that the butler of the house asked for her assistance because none of the maids in the manor knows how to brew the rare tea that is needed. The woman looks down her nose at her and says she would have to scold the butler first for not hiring a proper maid. She asks her companion if she agrees with her. Amelia speaks up that the butler is not to blame, as there are simply not enough women in Erndorf who want to work as maids. The woman laughs and calls the female lead a funny girl, saying that commoners these days seem to share the same mindset. They cry for equality, yet avoid the works of maids, considering it a humble job. They hold their heads high, as if they are noble women. Amelia replies to her, pointing out that such view of the world is basic, and the woman is taken aback by her bravery. Our female lead informs her that a cotton mill opened nearby, and the workers earn twice as much money as the maids in the manor. Because of this, everyone is choosing to work there. She adds that it is a practical and free choice. To explain her point, she compares it to the woman's decision to vacation in Erndorf just to escape the rainy season, saying it's just as practical. The woman, clearly shocked, demands to know who Amelia thinks she is to make such a statement. Amelia responds confidently that her name is Byrne, not Beaver or Beggar. The woman looks at her surprised, and Amelia repeats her name, declaring that she is Amelia Byrne, the fiancée of House Meyer. After leaving Vernon Manor, our female lead talks about her experience with her friend Haley. Haley's eyes light up with excitement as she responds, saying how awesome Amelia is. She's thrilled that her friend stood up to those snobby ladies and gave them a taste of their own medicine. Then she adds that if she were in Amelia's shoes, she would probably just run away, feeling all scared. Because honestly, she thinks running away sounds way better than facing a punishment like caning. Our girl seriously tells her friend that nobles aren't allowed to unfairly punish commoners anymore, and that rule has been in place for over 100 years now. She mentions that if any of the women at the manor tried to hit her with a cane, she would have sued right away. Her friend tries to soothe her and mentions that she's aware of the Equality Act as well. But honestly, the only reason she thinks our female lead could get away with behaving like that around the nobles is because she's that person's fiancé. It makes our girl still for a moment as she thinks about it. Furthermore, Haley goes ahead to say that she knows our female lead is intelligent, but she stresses the need to be more careful. Even though our girl is a wonderful friend to her, not everyone might see her in the same light. Noticing that our girl is lost in thought, her friend gives her a friendly tap on the shoulder, encouraging her to cheer up a bit. As an afterthought, she adds that people are starting to forget about House Meyer's fiancé. Amelia looks up at her friend and thanks her gratefully. On a sunny day, the bells are ringing. It's been a few days now, and Amelia is in a carriage, on her way to a dinner party where she'll see her fiancé. She takes a deep breath, trying to remind herself to chill out. After all, she's been to this party every year for a while now. She's pretty certain that this one will be just like all the others. She tries to recall a line from a book she read a while back. It goes something like, "No one can break you down unless your heart allows it." This thought sticks with her, and she tells herself that nobody can really change who she is, not unless she allows it. So she clenches her fist against her chest in determination. Our female lead arrives at her destination, and she's announced at the party as she walks in. People turns to stare at her, and the looks she gets are icy. It hits her that this place is really different from Vernon Manor. Back there, people didn't hold back. They would openly make fun of her. But here, it's almost worse. Instead of mocking her, the crowd ignores her as if she doesn't even exist at all. A woman walks up to her hurriedly. She is the lady of House Meyer, Duchess Caitlin Meyer. Amelia respectfully bows, greeting the Duchess, and asks how she has been. The woman replies that she's doing pretty well and then asks after her in return. Our girl replies and says she's doing well as usual, and she thanks the Duchess for caring enough to ask about her. Lady Caitlin dives right in, stating that she needs a favor from her, and it's not an easy one. She explains that a distant relative showed up today out of the blue after traveling a long way, and now someone has to escort them. Amelia quickly says she'll take care of it, and the Duchess expresses her gratitude for the help. Thereafter, she turns to leave, and our girl finds herself alone once more. She can't help but think that Lady Caitlin pulls this stunt every single year. She always finds a bunch of excuses to make her son sit next to women who aren't his fiancé. Here she is again, left all by herself in this massive manor. Just then, she hears an announcement from behind her. It turns out that the oldest son of House Meyer, Lord Hadius Meyer, has shown up. Amelia turns around to look at him and feels her cheeks heat up. She can't help but think that Hadius is incredibly handsome and blessed by God, just like his name suggests. He is her fiancé who is envied by most people in the world. He shares his time with everyone except for one person, her. Not only that, but he is only ever cold to her. She grits her teeth in frustration. As if he can hear her thoughts, Hadius turns around and locks eyes with her. The sudden eye contact makes her flinch, and she quickly looks away. Needing a break, she heads outside to the balcony for some fresh air, telling herself she's been far too tense lately. As she steps out, she bends down to check out some pretty flowers that catch her eye. A man calls out to her from behind and gives a respectful bow as he greets her. He introduces himself as Urgar Wisher and says it's a real honor to be in the company of a lady as beautiful as Amelia. She puts two and two together and figures out that he's probably the substitute partner Lady Caitlin had talked about earlier. She gives him a friendly smile and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Urgar responds by saying that what he's about to say might surprise her since they've just met. However, as he starts talking, her attention drifts. She notices someone behind him, and her eyes light up with excitement. It's Hadius, and he's helping an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Her heart begins to race as she watches him. Unfortunately, she reminds herself that he never looks her way. Still, she can't help but wonder why her heart still races like that. It is embarrassing to even call it a crush. Returning her gaze to Urgar, Amelia, and mentions that it's pretty late now and asks him if they should head inside. He seems a bit taken aback when he realizes that she hadn't really been paying attention to what he has been saying. Our girl tells him that she's feeling really thirsty and wants to go inside to grab some water. With a smile, she reaches out to take his arm, and he gladly goes along with her suggestion. As they walk back inside, She thinks about Hadius Meyer. He's like a bright star shining high in the sky, and everyone seems to admire him. She believes there's no way she could ever reach him, no matter how wide she spreads her arms. It's like he's on a different level, and it makes her feel so tiny and insignificant in comparison. On Hadius's part, he watches them secretly, and the elderly lady in the wheelchair asks him if something is wrong because he had paused all of a sudden. He tells her that it's nothing. However, he has a huge frown on his face. Shortly before dusk, Amelia arrives home as her carriage pulls to a stop, and she gets down. There's a woman outside doing laundry, and she welcomes Amelia back, noting that she is a bit late. The woman is her stepmother, and her name is Kalia Byrne. In response, our female lead explains that she is late because the carriage wheel got stuck in mud on the way back. Concerned, Kalia asks if she is okay or if she got hurt. Amelia reassures her, saying that she is perfectly fine. Then she offers to help with the laundry. However, her mother gently tells her to leave it for now, knowing that she must be worn out. She advises her daughter to go inside and take a break, but the girl responds by saying that all she did at the party was eat and have a good time. Kalia then decides to change the subject and asks about the Duchess. She wants to know if Lady Caitlin is feeling well, and she also asks about the young master, Hadius Meyer, wanting to hear how he is doing. Amelia's expression shifts, but she forces a small smile and tells her mother that they are both doing fine. Her mother responds that she is happy to hear that, as she has heard the training at Elford Academy can be really tough. She reminds her daughter to make sure she supports her fiancé during this time. Our girl smiles back and assures her mother that she will definitely do that. However, Amelia feels sad again because her mother, Kalia, is totally unaware of what's going on around her. She doesn't realize that her daughter is treated as if she's invincible at the dinner parties. It's hard for Amelia because she knows her mother has been through so much. Kalia used to be in a terrible relationship with her ex-husband who would whip and abuse her. Amelia's father was the one who rescued Kalia from that awful situation. Her mother is someone who believes compliance and patience are the virtues of life. Moreover, Kalia couldn't make it to attend the engagement ceremony 4 years ago, so she still hasn't met the young master or his parents. The female lead realizes that it's her fault for not being honest with her mother about everything, and she feels like the situation is depressing. Suddenly, she asks her mother where Charlotte is, and her mother just shrugs in response. She figures that Charlotte is probably up in the attic again. Her mother then reminds her that she should know how sensitive the child is. As soon as Charlotte heard the carriage arriving, she quickly ran up to the attic and locked the door behind her. Despite having reassured the child that it was only Amelia returning, her words did not seem to have any effect. Our female lead rushes inside and knocks loudly on the attic door. She insists that Charlotte come out immediately and open the door. The door creaks open slowly, and her younger sister peeks out timidly. Amelia starts to scold her, reminding her that she has warned her numerous times not to hide like this. The younger girl fidgets nervously and insists that she wasn't hiding. Instead, she claims she was searching for her teddy bear. She lifts it up to show proof of her quest. And for the first time, we notice that Charlotte's face looks disfigured. It's scarred and slightly drooping on one side. Amelia thinks to herself that her sister is not being truthful once again. A few years ago, some mean kids tied Charlotte upside down from a tree and called it a monster hunt. The truth is, she didn't do anything wrong. She was simply blind in one eye from birth. Because of what happened that day, she now tends to steer clear of strangers just like she did today. Presently, she can tell that her sister doesn't believe her. So she really tries to convince her that what she's saying is true. She explains that she dozed off while searching for her teddy bear and swears that she is telling the truth. Finally, Amelia agrees with her. She tells the child to come out of the attic so they can head downstairs. As they sit at the dining table sipping tea, Kalia tells her older daughter that she's going to start working at a factory in Tehran tomorrow. Amelia is surprised by the revelation, and Kalia explains that she'll be oiling spinning machines. She mentions that her pastor recommended it, so it shouldn't be too risky or stressful for her. Plus, she'll be earning a monthly paycheck. She mentions that it's wonderful because she can save money for Mitch's education. Amelia quietly holds her teacup, feeling a bit uneasy. She thinks that working in a factory would actually pay her mother more than her job as a laundress. Yet she worries about the risks because factories can be quite dangerous, with all kinds of accidents that could happen. However, the royal grant from the king has stopped coming in, so they really need to find a way to make ends meet. As she sits and thinks about their situation, she remembers that she can't take any jobs because she's engaged to someone from House Meyer. But then she can't just sit around and watch her mother struggle to carry the weight all on her own. She starts brainstorming ideas in her head, trying to figure out how she can help. Elsewhere, we see Hadius stepping out of a carriage, and a young man is waiting for him. He seems pleased to see the man, and he asks about his well-being. The young man replies that he's doing fine. Just then, a voice from behind chimes in, saying that Elfort Academy is a tough place that really wears people down, and mentions that Hadius looks like he's lost some weight. The young master turns around and sees that it's his mother who has just spoken. He tells her that things aren't so bad and that she doesn't need to worry. The young man next to him nods in agreement and adds that Hadius was actually picked as the top graduate, which is quite impressive. The Duchess finally notices the person standing beside her son, and she smiles, saying hello to him. Suddenly, the arrival of a man distracts everybody, and he is announced as Grand Duke Hannes Reichnen, also known as the King of Mines. Our male lead greets him, mentioning that it's been a while since they last saw each other. He asks how Hannes has been doing lately. They shake hands, and the Duke congratulates him in advance on his graduation. He remembers it like it was just yesterday, when Hadius and his daughter, Bianca, were sitting together, enjoying a game of chess. Once upon a time, House Meyer and House Reichnen were supposed to join together as one big family through a marriage agreement. But then the king stepped in and ordered that the wedding be called off, all because of that child. Lady Caitlin announces that her son will be too busy to attend parties from now on, and Hannes asks why. She explains that Hadius will begin succeeding his title starting the next day. It's about time for him to graduate from being the young master. Hannes is surprised that it's happening so soon. Suddenly, the Duchess remembers that the dinner party is next week, which means they would have to invite that child again. She complains that it's difficult to find an appropriate young man to escort her each time. Hannes comments that she is already engaged and she is a commoner. So what man would want to escort someone like her? Chuckling, the Duchess says that the last guy didn't seem all that hesitant. She tries to think of his name and realizes it's Ergar. She asks her son if he remembers, mentioning that Ergar was the same guy who escorted Amelia last year. But Hadius replies that he's not really sure about that. Ignoring the reply, the Duchess soon falls into a steady stream of conversation with Duke Hannes. She tells him that Ergar's family revealed that they would like to take in Amelia as their son's mistress. Hannes is excited about the news and encourages the Duchess to invite Ergar to the next dinner party. She agrees it would be nice, but mentions that there are too many people watching. Everyone is already gossiping about how much she ignores that girl. Duke Hannes thinks she's being too soft and questions why that girl is still taking bridal lessons. He thinks the girl pretends to be innocent and sweet, but suspects she's just biding her time for when she can finally be a duchess. Lady Caitlin is on the same page. She adds that even though she really doesn't want Amelia to come to the dinner party, she can't refuse to invite her because of the king's orders. Hadius interrupts them, saying there is no need to waste time discussing the matter. He mentions that whether people talk behind their backs or that girl dreams of becoming a duchess, everybody can do as they wish. All of it won't matter in the end, because he is going to put an end to everything before he graduates. His mother asks him what he means by that, and he says he is going to break up the engagement. A year goes by, and it's already that day again. Amelia only goes there once a year, but she feels so uncomfortable today. She's all dressed up and looking pretty, but her feet throbs and aches in her shoes. She wonders if they have grown again. However, she decides she can endure the pain, since it's just one day. She believes that whoever holds out until the end will be the winner. Once she arrives at her destination, she walks in, and Lady Caitlin doesn't waste time in approaching her. Going straight to the point, she tells our girl that it's unfortunate, but she has to ask for a difficult favor again. Then she goes ahead to say that her niece, who is still very young, arrived suddenly and hasn't formally debuted in society yet, meaning Hadius will be partnering with his cousin for today. Amelia says it's fine with her, and Lady Caitlin thanks her and walks away. Our female lead thinks to herself that it's the same as always every year, but at least nothing will happen now. Suddenly, she hears the Duchess's voice, telling her son to introduce himself because his cousin is here to congratulate him on graduating. Apparently, the little girl set out early this morning by carriage. Amelia turns around to watch, and her heart begins to race when she sees Hadius. He is speaking to his cousin and telling her how much she has grown, claiming he almost didn't recognize her. As she watches them, her heart races even faster, and the realization makes her suddenly nauseous. So she turns around to get out as quickly as possible. As she begins to walk away, she catches phrases of different conversations. Some people are talking about Hadius' upcoming graduation and his inevitable duty as heir. One person thinks Lady Caitlin wouldn't step down as the family's head that easily, and another person says her son is a perfectly trained heir who would probably play dead if she ordered him to do so. This statement meets with disagreement, and someone speaks up to say House Meyer's heir isn't someone to be underestimated. This person further reveals that the boy would be receiving the Medal for Excellency at his graduation, and concludes that Hadius may be more ruthless than they think. The gossips take an intense tone when someone brings up Duke Reichnen's meeting with Hadius. Amelia halts in her tracks at the mention of the name. She tries to recall if she heard properly. Reichnen, the king of mines and father to Bianca, who was Hadius's former fiancée. Realizing that she is the cause of that broken engagement, she squeezes her chest tightly. In her head, she wonders if those two intend to get back together despite it being against the king's wishes. As she returns to the surrounding conversation, she picks up a remark about House Meyer, planning to interfere in the civil war of the neighboring nation of Trunia. One person speculates that if they provide Trunia's king with funds to suppress his rebel forces, they'll be compensated with Trunia's mines. He goes on to add that it might be a move aimed at establishing a joint company with Reichnen Mining. A doubtful listener says he looks forward to seeing how things play out. By this point, Amelia's head is spinning with all the information. She suspects that Hadius wanting a joint company with Duke Reichnen could be a move to get back with Bianca. The girl had been friends with him since they were children, and she'd stepped in between them through a forced engagement. However, she still feels uneasy, and she realizes that it's because she hasn't given up on Hadius yet. If only they hadn't met like that for the first time on the day of their engagement. Deciding it's all for the best, she inwardly thinks it's time to end her long, tedious relationship. Then she quickens her pace, making her way towards the exit. From afar, Hadius sees her retreating form and watches her. Out in the sun, Amelia immediately feels better. And now that she thinks about it, she realizes that Lady Caitlin didn't assign her a partner today, and she wonders why. Suddenly, she hears someone behind her, and she turns around to find Hadius, a pleasant surprise to be honest. He asks her what she is looking for, and she hides her surprise from his ability to find her. She bows respectfully and greets him, addressing him as young master. He replies to her, saying that she hasn't changed a bit. When she looks up at him confused, he explains to her that she still behaves like a servant. Amelia recalls her first meeting with him in the past. Back then, he had asked her if she wanted to be considered his servant instead of his fiancée. He then told her that if such wasn't her intention, she had to stop addressing him as young master. That day, she inwardly considered the consequences of not addressing him as young master. Then she would become some vague, strange person who is neither a commoner nor a noble. Presently, Amelia reminds herself that she can't become something she's not, even if she marries him. She tells him that she has no choice, and she can't change how the world is. So even if she seems like his servant, he would just have to deal with it. Hadius chuckles to himself and informs her that she's quite arrogant. He takes a step forward, and it makes our girl uncomfortable. Then, out of the blue, he reveals to her that it is unfortunate because Urgar Wisher, whom she was looking for, wasn't invited. Furthermore, he claims that he couldn't allow someone who doesn't meet his standards to come here. When Amelia realizes that he is referring to her partner from last year, she smiles. In reply, she tells her fiancé that he's funny because she's obviously the most undeserving of being here. However, the response she gets is quite surprising. Hadius heatedly mentions to her that it's not true, and her eyes widen in surprise. She wonders why he's saying that all of a sudden because it's been 5 years, and during that time he never once looked her way. Outwardly remaining composed, she tells him Urga, at least, is a person of conscience and compassion, unlike the people of House Meyer. In reply, Hadius coldly states that he will give her a piece of advice. Then he proceeds to tell her that some men hide their filthy urges under pity and compassion. The statement enrages Amelia, and she's in disbelief that he could say something like that. Pursing her lips in annoyance, she decides that it doesn't matter and suddenly wonders why she's still here with him. She thanks Hadius for his advice, letting him know that she doesn't think it'd be of any assistance, but she's sure he had good intentions. Then, finally, she excuses herself, informing him that her carriage will be arriving soon. Ignoring her words, he asks her to come with him for a walk instead. However, she patiently explains that she cannot walk with him because her carriage will be here soon, so she must go. In reply, he tells her that the carriage will be late, and she asks him why. Instead, he turns away, telling her to follow him if she's curious. Keeping a safe distance from him, Amelia follows behind. She thinks it's unusual because they have never walked together like this before, and she wonders what he is up to. To break the awkward silence, Hadius announces that he will be graduating soon, and Amelia replies that she has heard. He goes on to state that he will be called Duke Meyer soon enough. Lost for a reply, she asks him if it displeases him. He turns around to look at her and says it doesn't displease him because he is someone who has to take everything that he wants without compromise. She replies to him that he is the opposite of her because she thinks everything has a price. To gain something, one must give up something in return, similar to how she plans to give him up, so she can have a normal, happy life with her family. After walking for a while, Amelia speaks again, apologizing to Hadius for bringing up the same topic. Then she informs him that she might miss her carriage and politely says that she must excuse herself now. However, he ignores her words and asks about her bridal lessons instead. He's curious to know if she attends all of them. A bit confused, our female lead replies in the affirmative. He then asks her if she has learned how to dance. She replies that she has learned a little bit, and he says it's a good thing because he won't be attending his graduation with someone who can't dance. Having had enough, Amelia asks him what he means by his statement, and much to all of our surprise, Hadius tells her that she will be attending his graduation with him as his fiancé. After this revelation, Amelia gets over her shock instantly. She replies negatively, saying it's ridiculous. When Hadius asks her why, she points out that it's obvious her relationship with him is a sham, and she tells him that if he needs a partner, he should find someone else. He replies that graduation is different from the dinner party and that there will be a ball. He says he cannot dance with another woman when he already has a fiancé, but Amelia doesn't change her answer. She tells him no, that she doesn't want to be his partner at his graduation. Our male lead asks in disbelief if that's what she wants, and she insists that she doesn't want to go. He leans forward and asks her if she has forgotten that whatever she does and wants doesn't matter in their relationship. This statement makes our girl furious, and she blurts out that she's surprised by his guts to ask her to accompany him as his fiancé and even dance with him. Furthermore, she asks him if he thinks she will obediently do as he says, or if he takes her for a fool. Hadius turns away and informs her that the king always attends the graduation ceremony of Elfort Military Academy. Therefore, it will make him curious if House Meyer's heir attends with someone else. It might even anger him and prompt questions about the fiancé he has chosen for the great house. Our male lead insists that Amelia has to fulfill her duty as his fiancée. With an annoyed look on her face, her mind begins to race. She thinks to herself that it's true they have to remain engaged to each other until the king officially allows them to break off the engagement, because even the great House Meyer cannot ignore the king at a public event. Hadius interrupts her thoughts and asks her to hurry because they are almost at their destination. She looks up, distracted, and follows him for a bit. Then she is surprised by what she sees. It's a brand new carriage. Her fiancé informs her that it's for her and tells her to get in. He then mentions that Beffy Dilson will be her coachman as a tall man steps forward and walks toward Amelia. He looms above her for a moment, then bows respectfully, notifying her that he will do anything she wants because he's a good servant. Proceeding, Hadius announces that Biffy will go to her home every early morning to work and return to a farm late at night, and that the man will help with any chores and run errands. This discovery greatly upsets our female lead, and she shouts angrily at the male lead, asking him why he's doing all this, and if he thinks she can forget about the humiliation she endured for the past 5 years. She calls it an insult and cajolery, clenching her fists against her chest angrily. Acting unbothered, he tells her to think whatever she wants, because he won't bother explaining. Then he adds that if she is so bothered by the gift, she should consider it alimony. It's the wrong thing to say, as it further upsets Amelia. All along, she had been holding on to a shred of hope. Until now, she had thought this man would feel the slightest bit of remorse. As she clenches her fists again, she tells him that she realizes why he's doing all this. It's because they will finally be able to break off their engagement one day, and he's just trying to ease his conscience in advance. She steps toward him angrily and informs him that he's mistaken about something, making it clear that she is the one who has absolutely no desire to maintain their absurd engagement. Just hearing the name Meyer makes her feel sick and tired, so she would gladly break off the engagement even without alimony. Hadius's eyes turn hard as he looks at her coldly. Having had enough, our female lead turns away. Speaking over her shoulder, she lets him know that he doesn't need to prepare any more gifts for her in the future, because even without compensation, she will fulfill her duties as his fiancée on his graduation day. As she begins to walk away, he announces that if she refuses, Bephi will lose something very dear to him. This stops Amelia in her tracks, and she turns around with a questioning look. Hadius explains that he had promised to find Beffy's sister, who was sold off to a factory, in return for his service. She turns to look at the quiet man for confirmation, and he bows his head, looking anxious. Our male lead proceeds to say that if the female lead refuses, he would fire the coachman immediately. His reason is that House Meyer has no mercy, sympathy, or sense of guilt. All she has to do is accept the carriage and the coachman. Amelia thinks that she really doesn't know Hadius at all. She wonders what he is thinking and why he is going so far. Beefy speaks up, saying that he will stay at a nearby farm for a while, but our girl insists that she cannot accept him. However, he falls to his knees on the ground, pleading with her that he is obedient and can do his job perfectly. This makes her grit her teeth in anger, because Hadius is threatening her with the man's sister. Seeing the resignation on her face, our male lead turns to the coachman and instructs him to serve Amelia as best as he can. He then tells her that if anything comes up, she should send word through Beefy to him, and he will do the same. The scene changes, and we see a grand hall where soft music is playing. Nobles and high-standing members of society chatter and engage in small talk. Hadius stands alone, holding a glass of champagne, as the music grows quieter in his head. All he can hear is Amelia's voice ringing in his ears. He thinks back to their last encounter when she had opened her eyes wide in surprise, her cheeks blushing red as she clenched her fists in anger. At that moment, he thought she had sounded so beautiful. He smiles to himself at the thought of it. However, his expression turns cold when he remembers that the engagement is destined to break off. A voice interrupts his thoughts, asking him why, as the host of the party, he is standing alone over here. Hadius turns around to see the newcomer, a man he recognizes as the eldest son of House Vunair. He thinks to himself that this man is probably the type who believes they are close friends just because he was invited to the party. The man in question puts his hand to his forehead and mimics scanning the room. He asks Hadius why the woman isn't here today and says it is a shame that she is absent. When our male lead asks the newcomer whom he is talking about, he replies that he is referring to House Meyer's fiancée. Hadius's countenance immediately changes and he gives the man a chilling stare. However, the man continues speaking, seeming not to notice his companion's mood. He says that Lady Caitlin can be harsh at times, considering that most of the guests come to these parties just to see Amelia. At this point, Hadius grips his glass tightly, thinking to himself that this is the reason why he is rushing to carry out his plans much earlier than he had intended. All these people disgust him, the nameless, worthless individuals who cling to his fiancée like flies. On her part, Amelia has kept her distance from him and expressed her discomfort around him for the past 5 years. Yet she smiled. She has never smiled in front of him, but she smiled in front of those people, and he finds that very unpleasant. He grips his glass even tighter, and it cracks, causing champagne to leak out. In this new scene, we see Amelia and Beefy alone for the first time. She apologizes to him for not introducing herself properly earlier because she was startled. Then she claims it's a pleasure to meet him and thanks him for working for her. The big man turns around and tells her that she doesn't have to escort him all the way because Hadius will scold him. This revelation surprises Amelia. She advises Beefy not to call House Meyer's heir by his first name, but to address him as young master, and Beefy gives her a confused look. It makes her think to herself that he might have been taught how to behave, but he sounds like a naive child whenever he opens his mouth. Outwardly, Amelia tells him that the young master would probably scold him for addressing him by his first name. However, Beefy informs her that Hadius had not scolded him whenever he addressed him by his first name. Once again, this revelation surprises Amelia. She considers it strange because she would have thought Hadius would be sensitive about that kind of thing. Outwardly, she tells Beefy that there's no need to be formal with her family either. However, he must be polite when speaking to certain people that she tells him to watch out for. He agrees with a cute, excited look on his face. Inwardly, she wonders how the two men crossed paths, but she decides it's none of her business. As they walk, she notifies him that he doesn't have to visit her home every day, but he objects immediately. He informs her that Hadius had warned him that she would say something like that, and if he does as she says, his sister Laura would be sold off to a factory. This makes Amelia feel as if she has been trapped in her fiancé's intricate web, and she can't escape nor can she refuse. They arrive at her house, but before she introduces Beefy to her family, she tells him there's one thing he has to keep in mind. Firstly, they meet her mother, and Kalia is terrified when she sees the huge, strange man. She asks Amelia what is going on, and Beefy speaks up, saying he's a good servant because he would do whatever his mistresses want. Amelia explains that Hadius had asked her to attend his graduation and then gifted her a carriage and a coachman who would work for them in return. Relieved, Kalia smiles happily and shakes hands with Beefy. She tells him it's a pleasure to meet him and introduces herself as Amelia's mother. The big man tells her that she's pretty and thanks her for letting him work. Then she turns to Amelia, noting that she must be tired from coming all this way, and asks her if she would like to have some tea. Inside, they speak over tea. Amelia shares with her mother that Hadius seems to feel guilty about neglecting her for the past few years. She also expresses her suspicion that the engagement will be called off soon, probably after the young master's graduation. Kalia gasps in shock at this revelation. It's the first time she's really learning about Amelia's predicament. She hurriedly gathers her daughter in a hug, which surprises our female lead. When Kalia pulls back, she holds her daughter's face gently and tells her that it's probably for the better because she's already 19 and cannot waste her entire life just waiting for Hadius. She claims that Amelia's father wasn't of sound mind before he passed away and that people should live within their means. Still, she points out that the young master of House Meyer seems very generous for sending them a carriage and a worker. She says it's a luxury that they cannot afford and asks her daughter if she thanked her fiancé properly. Looking away, Amelia claims that she did. Suddenly, the door creaks open beside them. Amelia recognizes it as the work of her baby sister, so she calls out to Charlotte to come out. When the child doesn't step out, she asks her if she's going to hide there all day, and Charlotte's voice hesitantly comes from behind the door. She asks her sister who the man outside is. It makes Amelia smile as she explains to her younger sister that his name is Beffy, and he's a very nice man. She adds that the man even brought a gorgeous horse and carriage for Charlotte to ride in. However, the little girl still feels hesitant. She asks if this newcomer can see angels. Amelia offers her hand to her little sister, telling her not to worry, because Beffy is from a mysterious country in the Highlands, and the people there have a special eye for beauty, which will enable him to see the beautiful angel inside of Charlotte. It seems to convince the child, and she steps out completely and places her hand in her sister's own. Amelia reassures her that otherwise she wouldn't have invited a stranger to the house. Charlotte clings to her dress nervously, and Amelia takes her to greet their new worker. When they get outside, Amelia urges her little sister to introduce herself. The child peeks out from behind her sister's skirt. Beffy takes the first step and introduces himself as a good servant, telling Charlotte that she's an angel. This makes the little girl giggle, and she finally steps out from behind her sister's dress. However, she still clutches her hands together and stutters when introducing herself. She informs Beffy that it's a pleasure to meet him, and when they shake hands, he mentions to her that she's pretty and thanks her for letting him work here. Later on, we see Charlotte and Beffy together in the fields. He is seated contentedly, speaking to her, and she's giggling happily, hopping around. Amelia watches them from a distance and thinks about how worried she was in the beginning. She's glad that they are getting along better than she had expected. She hasn't seen her little sister laugh like that in a while, and Beffy is helping out a great deal. Furthermore, she absently thinks to herself that this is really alimony, and she flinches at the thought. It makes her feel bad for accepting such a vile excuse, and she sighs as she wonders why her mood is constantly swinging up and down. She can feel depressed all day and then suddenly feel better after a certain point. She can't help but resent the man who neglected her for 5 years. Yet, her heart starts racing the moment she sees him. She feels like such a miserable fool. Some hours later, we see that it's dusk, and we hear Charlotte calling out to her sister. Amelia blinks awake, and her younger sister asks her if she's tired. She replies that she isn't, saying she just dozed off for a moment. The little girl still looks worried and asks her if she's sick. However, Amelia replies that she's not and asks if anything is wrong. Charlotte then reminds her that she has to go to Vernon Manor tomorrow. And it makes our female lead smile. She assures her little sister that there is nothing to worry about because she only has to stay there for a few hours. Still, the young child slumps face down on her older sister's lap. She complains that she doesn't want her to go there and vehemently asks who cares about bridal lessons. However, Amelia calmly tells Charlotte that the things she learns there are beneficial because she gets to learn many interesting things like Latin, piano, art, and dancing. She ruffles the child's hair and says that there's also a treasure room in that manor. This perks up Charlotte's interest, and she raises her head, asking about the treasure room. Amelia explains that the room is called the library because it has all the books in the world. Charlotte asks if there are storybooks like the ones Amelia reads for her, and she answers in the affirmative. The younger girl excitedly mentions that she likes storybooks, like the one with the magician and the dragon. Smiling, our girl asks if her baby sister is referring to the adventures of Kildred, and Charlotte confirms it's the one. She begs Amelia to read it for her again, and Amelia says she will borrow it once she goes back to the manor. She points out that it's a good thing because she can go there and borrow that book. They hold hands and head back toward the house. The next day, the scene is set at Vernon Manor, and whispers begin to spread the moment Amelia walks in. People gossip about her and the carriage she arrived in today. One person assumes that it's probably a cheap carriage, but someone else corrects them, saying that it's a proper one with 4 wheels, and it even has the crest of House Meyer on it. Another gossip finds the revelation outrageous. Somewhere in the room, we see 2 men standing aside. One turns to the other, pointing out Amelia and calling her a mouse that constantly visits the manor. The other man, Nathan, replies that she is nothing like a mouse. Instead, he calls her a shameless black swan, trying to mingle among white swans. When Amelia walks past him, he looks after her curiously and wonders where she's going. He follows her quietly and peeks behind a wall. She meets with Haspel, the butler, who greets her and guides her through a private doorway. She nods her head and follows him, and this gesture piques Nathan's interest. He wonders what is going on and why the 2 of them went inside together. Nathan speculates that there is no reason for the 2 of them to be there alone together and wonders what they are doing. He steps forward and peeps through the opening in the door, seeing Amelia and Haspel discussing quietly and softly. She seems to be teaching him something, and Nathan bursts through the door, intruding. He asks both of them what they are doing over there. Haspel becomes nervous and stammers a greeting, addressing Nathan as Lord Nathan Melvin. Instead, the noble asks him what is in his hand. When Haspel is unable to respond, Amelia replies that it is an account book, which surprises the noble. He asks Haspel why he is showing her such a thing. The butler begins to sweat and stammer again. Once more, our female lead comes to the rescue. She explains that Haspel was having trouble understanding double-entry bookkeeping, so she was helping him out. Nathan asks her if she knows how, and she says she knows a little bit. He then asks her if her parents work as bookkeepers or accountants, and she replies no. She explains that she had simply read some books during her visit here. This greatly surprises Nathan, as he thinks to himself that Amelia had learned double-entry bookkeeping by herself while reading books and can understand enough about managing an account book. He realizes that this is not something that anyone can do. Our female lead interrupts his thoughts and politely asks him if it is okay for her to continue with Haspel. Nathan tells her to go ahead, and Haspel breathes a sigh of relief. However, the noble turns around again, hesitating for a moment. He calls out to the butler and points out that the book in his hands looks really thick for an account book. He asks Haspel if he is compensating Amelia for her help, adding that a butler who manages account books is typically paid triple what other servants are paid. Haspel becomes anxious again. He says he truly wants to pay Amelia in any way he can, but because she is the fiancée of House Meyer, someone like him could not dare pay her for anything. He explains that this is why she only gives him a few pieces of advice, like he saw them doing. Nathan insists that it looks like Haspel is taking advantage of Amelia, and that it seems she is only Miss Byrne to him when he needs her. He asks the butler if he is not just using her for free because he thinks she is soft-hearted. Turning to Amelia, Nathan offers to give her a piece of advice. He tells her that people underestimate her because she just stares back with wide, innocent eyes. He says she should brace herself and give them all hell someday. And if she does that, everything will change. In the next scene, we see Amelia jiggling a bag of coins. She seems to have been through quite a lot of mess. She was forced to accept the money after what had transpired in the previous scene. Haspel had insisted that she take some payments. However, he wasn't wrong earlier because the fiancé of House Meyer isn't allowed to work as a laundress or a factory worker. She weighs the coins in her hand and thinks to herself that this is her first ever wage. She wonders if it's all right to accept it or if she should return it. But then, she could help her family with the money. Feeling its weight, she gulps nervously as her brain racks for different answers. Finally, she grits her teeth in annoyance and sighs. She decides that she should return it because everyone at Vernon Manor is her enemy, and she would rather not do anything that would cause a misunderstanding. She decides she will find a job as soon as Hadius breaks off the engagement. It seems like the right thing to do. Likewise, she recalls the noble who had spoken up earlier, Nathan Melvin. Then she thinks to herself that regardless of what she does at the manor, everyone is usually busy laughing at her or mocking her, so what Nathan said had come as a surprise. Perhaps he is different from other people, she assumes. A voice interrupts her thoughts, saying that she seems tired. She looks up to find Hadius standing before her. It's a surprise as she wonders what he's doing there. She jolts up to her feet and asks him his reason for coming here. He informs her that he came to see the land that he will purchase, and this news surprises Amelia. She gets chills as the young master tells her that he was thinking of using the land for hunting. He claims that it would be a waste to use it for just that reason, saying that the land would make a nice lot for a hotel or a vacation villa. Our female lead is in disbelief. She wonders if Hadius means to throw her family out of this place, and she trembles. She wonders if he could be that cruel. He interrupts her thoughts again, saying that he heard that people have been insulting her during her bridal lessons. He swears to make them pay for what they have done. Amelia asks him if that is necessary, and Hadius replies that indeed it is because they were indirectly insulting House Meyer. Our girl tells him that she doesn't care what he chooses to do, but he shouldn't use her as his excuse. She claims she has been doing fine there on her own, and she may have had some unpleasant and annoying experiences, but she has gained enough to make up for all of that. Hadius assures her not to worry because he will crush them as he wishes, without using her as an excuse. It enrages her, and she asks him if he realizes how selfish he is, because he is the one who ordered her to take bridal lessons there, and now he wants to crush them. She asks him if he thinks that will help him save face, or if that will make her the one who has been enduring all of that in his place until now. She begs him to leave them alone, and if he wants her to attend his graduation, he shouldn't do anything about it. All she wants is for him to break their engagement as soon as possible, and she has even accepted his alimony, so she doesn't want this to drag on any longer. Hadius says he intended to discuss that matter with her and that he will need her to sign an agreement. He tells her to think of it as a contract regarding their separation. Amelia asks him why it is necessary because she already agreed to break up the engagement. He informs her that it's not because he suspects her sincerity, but that it's for his benefit. He says he requires it for his freedom. When she asks for an explanation, he tells her to just do as he says, and he swears that it will not hurt her in any way. Then she tells him to answer one question. She asks him why she has to sign an agreement and wait to have their engagement canceled. She wants to know if the king will acknowledge it at a later time. He simply shrugs, saying who knows, with a cunning smile on his face. He says he can't guarantee anything since the king is fickle and unpredictable. Furthermore, he urges her to get going so he can escort her home. However, Amelia turns away immediately. She refuses his help and tells him that she will be fine on her own. When he asks her why she doesn't want him to escort her, she informs him that she is afraid he might run into her family. He notifies her that he already did, and she turns around in surprise. In disbelief, she asks if he met her little sister, and he replies that he did. Amelia immediately thinks about her little sister, Charlotte. She is always worried that people will look at the child with fear and contempt in their eyes, and yet she has already been seen by Hadius. Seeming to read her mind, he tells her not to worry because he had called Charlotte an angel. This surprises Amelia as she wonders how he knew what to say. Hadius explains that Beefy had insisted that he do so, then he adds that Charlotte is a good child. The relief that Amelia feels immediately makes her go weak in the knees, and she staggers. Our male lead rushes to grab her and steady her, and he clasps her hand in the process. Our girl's heart begins to race as she thinks about how hot his hands feel. She reminds herself that she shouldn't feel this way. Enjoying this recap so far? Comment Emiya below. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao!